The story of this film has been shown in the time of 2013 when the epidemic has spread all over the world. It is all over the world and people are afraid to go out. If they go out they will die. The city, town, or even the whole world is deserted. Everyone is hiding, and then a man named Mark is shown. He was living at his workplace and living there while having the food available in the cafeteria. He is also helping his workers to dig a passageway and it will take them to the subway. One day, he notices someone has broken the car window and taken out the GPS from it. He becomes furious and asks his workers to dig fastly. He was enraged and demanded that his employees work quickly so that he could receive benefits. They have got a safe path while digging the path in this building. It was a way to go out and it was underground, so everyone was in a lane. Everyone wants to go out of this subway. Meanwhile, Mark sees a strange thing. The GPS is in his boss's bag. Mark chases his boss and asks him about it, and his boss says, "Okay, I will tell you, but on a condition that you will not tell this to anyone." Mark remembers when he met his boss and remembers when he started working with his boss. His boss used to treat everyone with anger. If any employee has done something wrong or late, it wasn't difficult for him to terminate him. He used to terminate employees without informing them. One day, he calls Mark in his office and asks why is he late for the projects? He doesn't think how difficult the project is. He gives him an ultimatum to complete this task within this time, otherwise, he will be terminated from the job. Mark sits for the whole night for the project even though he has made a dinner plan with his friends. Then the girl who likes him named Julia calls him and says, "We are closing the shop. So come fast, we have to do dinner." Mark promises her that he will come at dinner time. Then he starts his task, but then an error shows on his screen. The screen turns blue, so he leaves the work and moves to his home. Now Mark was late for dinner because of his task. He notices his house door was opened by his neighbor as he reaches home and his friend who lives with him and likes him at dinner. She didn't wait for Mark at dinner and he sees the news on the TV at night and they were talking about a Canadian teenager. He has spent 6 months at his home and was scared about coming out. The next day, everyone was talking about him while watching the clip, and then their coworker becomes worried. He leaves this place and goes out. Another worker informs the worker who has left that he hasn't changed his clothes in days and hasn't taken a bath. The present scene is shown where Mark was telling his boss he needs the GPS. Actually, he is finding the girl named Julia whom he likes. He tells the boss there is the only way to find her, that is the use of GPS from the subway, and the phones are not working or giving any signal. Now he offers his boss a deal and says, "If you will take me to the girl, I will give you the supply of another coworker." Firstly, his boss refuses, but then he changes his mind when Mark scares him and says, "You have stolen the GPS." He says, "I will tell this to everyone." Then they go to the subway tunnel. The GPS was working properly. It was telling the location, but they use it less so its battery will not be wasted. Later, they see the map of the subway tunnel and move according to it. There were other people and they hear the voice of a gun shoot. They run from there and reach a place where were many survivors. Meanwhile, a teenager runs while taking the bag full of GPS. They were chasing the teenager who was running from the stairs. The teenager reaches an area where he joins others. The companion of the teenager shows his gun to frighten them. Here, Mark and his boss bends on their knees. The teenager and his companion open the bag and become happy. They come to Mark for taking his bag. The light goes and Mark and his boss gets a chance from it, and his boss jumps at them and tries to take the gun from them. Mark also tackles the teenager and takes GPS back from him. He falls to the ground while taking GPS back and its screen cracks. Mark hides and his boss ends the man while taking the gun from him. Mark and his boss go to the runway and hide in the crowd so they can't find them. They stop near the stairs and his boss bandages his hand because there was a wound, and Mark sees the GPS that if it is working after falling or not. It was working and he was happy and says, "Thank God it is working." Mark sees his boss having the gun he took from the robbers and thinks maybe his boss will stay back from his commitment, but his boss says, "I will not." Mark thinks about the time that was good before the pandemic. He wishes the time to come back and was thinking about a morning before the pandemic when he was leaving his apartment. He heard the voice of flies from the next door apartment and smelled as well. He moves inside while opening its door, but there was trash everywhere due to it. There was the smell. He starts coughing as a result of it, and his neighbor notices him in whose apartment he was. He attacks him as he was having a knife in his hand and was shocked that why he has come here? He wasn't interested before and doesn't even know his name. Mark asks him, "Since when you are living here? Why didn't you come out for so long?" He says, "I have been living here for a month and scared of going out, so I used to stay inside." Mark goes to his job and his coworker Rovira was terminated. He didn't take a bath for many days. The security guards were taking him out because he slept in the office and didn't go home for a month. He used to sleep in the office and Mark follows when the guards were taking him out. The coworker doesn't want to go out and forces the guards not to take him out. The guards take him out, and as he goes out he was about to die. Mark asks them to take him inside, and the guards immediately take him inside. Now it was too late and the worker Rovira dies. Mark sees Rovira's locker, and there were many supplies to survive, like a flashlight, a gas canister, and food. Mark tells Julia in the evening the happening in his office and was thinking there will be something wrong. Julia consoles him nothing will happen, and then Mark is again shown in the present. He awakes and doesn't find his boss and thinks maybe his boss left him. He was there and shows him a plastic bag and tells him this plastic bag will protect GPS from getting damaged. Then they go to the subway tunnel and Mark asks his boss why he needs the GPS. Where did he want to go? His boss refuses to reply and doesn't want to tell him anything. Mark notices his boss used to keep the fruit seeds whatever he eats, like apples or anything. Then they jump into the sewerage areas and there was water downside. They were not injured and used GPS here to see their way and move forward. Finally, they reach the place where was Mark's apartment. Now they plan to move upside and then hangs a gas container later. They will shoot it. They will move upward when it will be shoot. The container was hanged and the boss shoots at first, but he misses the shot and Mark says he will try. He also misses the first try and his ears were also injured because of the noise. They don't lose courage and again try. Finally, there was an explosion. The boss helps Mark to move upward and they reach the building with the help of the pool. The building was full of many refugees, like a station. Now he was thinking about the neighbor who became furious that why he come here? He was still in his apartment. He didn't come out of his apartment yet. Mark reaches his home, but its lock was broken, means someone has gone inside, and a spy owl is shown at his door and everyone was seeing it. He starts shouting, so he will go inside his house through the door. A man present in his house was saying something in a foreign language. He couldn't understand, and when the man brings his hands out, Mark separates his hands. He feels pain due to it and successfully moves inside. The man frightens them with a knife, but Mark's boss also scares him with his gun. The man who is living in Mark's house and his family come in front. His younger daughter can understand Mark's language. She tells Mark they have no place to go, that's why they are living here in this apartment for a long time. They were living here because this apartment was empty. Mark shows them a picture of Julia and says, I used to live here with this girl. You must have seen this girl when you have reached here. They say while taking a promise that there wasn't anyone when we came here. Mark searches this place and his boss sees the fridge and there wasn't food, but there were dead doves who were getting ready to cook. They find a popcorn bag and he takes some seeds from it. He was collecting the seeds of many things. He also takes the knife from the kitchen, and then Mark goes to Julia's room. He sees Julia's puppet and holds a drawing as well. The younger girl has made it. It was on a paper and sees a doctor's name on its corner. There was an ultrasound picture and Mark discovered Julia was expecting. Mark didn't know anything about it. Mark starts thinking about his last days with Julia and remembers the last time they were watching the news and it was told about the pandemic in it. The government knows very well how people are dying and everyone is panicked, but they say you don't need to be worried. You carry on doing your daily tasks as you were doing. Just spend your normal life. Mark becomes upset hearing this news. He goes for his job and finds trash everywhere on the road. The people are fewer in number and a man was standing on the subway while wearing a mask. Reaching the office, he calls Julia, but Andrea picks up the call instead of Julia. She tells Mark that Julia doesn't want to talk to him. There was a fight between them because Mark doesn't like kids, but Julia likes kids a lot. Mark don't want to have a baby. Mark becomes worried because Julia doesn't want to talk to him. He wanted to go back home, but then the connections of TVs and phones were lost. Mark comes out of his office. He was feeling he is getting sick. He feels he will die soon, so he immediately goes inside the office. Since then he was in the office, and then the present scene is shown. Mark was in his apartment. The epidemic has spread and it starts raining. Mark and his boss use stretchers for collecting water. The others are using buckets and sticks to collect water for themselves. Mark and his boss get ready for their mission. Mark fills the bottle with water to use and also places Julia's puppet in his bag. He moves on his way and they again go to the sewerage area. They will separate their paths from there and start arguing about this. Mark wants to go towards the mall where Julia works to know if Julia is there or not. Now because the boss doesn't want to go to the mall, so he says our deal was to take you to the apartment. It wasn't my mistake that Julia wasn't in the apartment. I have fulfilled my deal and now GPS is mine. I will go where I want to go. The boss takes the knife from Mark and says you are searching for her and don't know is she alive or not. Mark becomes furious and starts beating his boss. During the fight, the boss drops his knife, and Mark's flashlight also falls down and it breaks. Mark says, what will be more important than my wife and my baby? Why you can't help me? The boss says for me there is something else that is important. He tells Mark he wants to go to the hospital where his father was. He tells his father was ill and was in the hospital now. I want to meet him, and the boss asks Mark, you can come if you want to. I want to meet my father once. After it, you can also take this GPS from me. After it, this GPS will be yours. You can use it anywhere. But Mark hesitates but then accepts this deal. They see some stairs and they follow them and find a letter there, but there wasn't anyone. They sit there while setting the woods on fire. There was someone who becomes attentive because of this light coming to them. They hear a noise and see what is the thing that is coming to them. They become surprised because of the thing, because it was a bear. It chases them and Mark notices it gets on his boss. He wants to help his boss and removes the bear from him. The boss was holding a torch, but Mark asks him to this the torch. He says, I have a plan, and the boss does the same and throws the torch. As he throws the torch, the bear gets a chance and jumps on him. As the bear jumps on the boss, Mark gets the chance to end it with his spear. They start laughing after ending the bear. They read the tag on the bear and discover this bear reached here from a zoo in the church. Later, they are shown eating the meat of the bear as they have roasted the bear on fire and now enjoying it. Here, the boss thanks Mark and says, you could run if you wanted to and couldn't help me, so everything will be yours. Mark, says the boss. If you had not completed your task on time, I would have fired you. Mark laughs hearing this, and the boss tells him he is worried for his father. He is nothing without his father. None will care about his death except for his father. He says he wants to meet his father and wants to talk to him. Mark tells his boss there are also difficulties in his life. He wasn't afraid of children, but he was concerned about his ability to accept responsibility for them. Later, they are again shown in the sewerage area. They meet a family who is coming in the opposite direction. One of them was injured, and seeing him they ask why they don't take him to the hospital. They give them the bad news and say everyone is saying the hospital has burnt. The hospital where the boss's father has burnt. The boss gets scared hearing this. Then he enters a building from a door nearby and moves upward. He observes the city while reaching the top floor. He wants to see if this news is true that the hospital has burnt where his father is. This news was true, the hospital was burned. Now, he was feeling there isn't any reason left for him to live. The boss breaks the window and tries to end himself. He tries to jump from there, but Mark pulls him and says, I need you. The boss was worried and says to Mark, I will not go with you. He gives the collected seeds to Mark and asks him to go and find his family because he has a reason to live. I have no reason as I have none left. Mark again goes to the sewerage area. He reaches a mall while walking and enters the parking area and couldn't discover that some people were chasing him. He ignored them and moved forward. Then he moves to Julia's where she works. There he finds the body of Andrea's mother. He sees the papers present there to find a clue and sees something in the mirror. He cleans the mirror and finds a note left by Andrea for her mother. She has told her mother that she is stuck with Julia in the supermarket. He immediately went to the supermarket but couldn't enter there. The entrance was blocked so the people would not steal the food. The protector of the market frightens him into coming inside, but Mark shows him Julia's picture. He has taken it from his apartment and says he doesn't want any trouble with the guard. He just came here in search of this girl. Now one of them moves inside to find out whether Julia is inside or not. Mark was waiting for the man to come back but then sees a shadow behind him. Actually, many people were chasing him. Mark ignored them and they move inside the market as they get the chance when Mark talks to the man. Mark was seeing this and moves inside the market and meets Julia's friend named Andrea. She says she also didn't meet her for a long time, and the last time she met her was when she visited the doctor. Mark wants to take Andrea toward the exit and was ending the attackers on his way. Then the fire falls at them from the ceiling that was between them. Andrea was stuck, but Mark was encouraging her that she can do this and come to this side while jumping. She was worried and felt she can't do this and will die. The fire again falls from the ceiling and Andrea dies there. Mark immediately runs in the opposite direction. Meanwhile, a man attacks him but the boss saves him. He says while reaching there, I knew you will need me. The attacker was still behind and attacks the boss, but he manages and beats the man who has attacked him. The boss leaves him while saying he is a kid and says my wound isn't huge, I will be fine. Now the boss asks Mark, we have to leave this building before it falls, and they again move to the sewerage area. They find a hole there dug by a man and they reach a movie theater while moving upward through the hole. There wasn't anyone and Mark can see the outer world from the glass door. He sees the doctor's office where Julia went. Mark thinks it is impossible to reach there, as the tunnel is blocked, and he has become worried, but now he moves upward through stairs to see from the window is there Julia in another building. He finds Julia but she wasn't looking at him. He has recognized that she is Julia. He was calling her name while shouting and hoping that she will look at him. She doesn't look at him at first but then turns this side after some time. She finally sees him and they start weeping to see each other in a state of happiness. Mark wants to tell his boss that he has found Julia. His boss was sitting in the theater and was bleeding. Mark wants to bandage him but his boss says, "I don't need this now, my time has come," and his last words were for Mark before death. He was requesting him to go to the other building while crossing this street and meet your family. The boss dies after saying this. Now Mark is shown who wants to fulfill the last wish of his boss. He wants to go to his family but when he steps out he feels he is getting sick. He was bleeding and feeling difficulty while walking. He encourages himself while seeing Julia and moving forward but then he shuts his eyes and finds Julia's face in front of him when he opens his eyes. It means he has crossed the street and now he was with Julia. They were happy to see each other and start their new life in this building. Their baby is also shown after some time and they collect water and food but their baby was strong. He moves out when he starts walking. They discover that the new generation has built-in immunity to the virus. Many teenagers are seeing their son from outside after many years when he was a teenager. They allow their son to go with them so he will see the outer world. Here this movie ends.